Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you guys today about how you can support literacy development at home. As a parent, it's important to keep literacy in the back of your mind. You should constantly be thinking of ways to incorporate language and literacy into everything you do with your child. Learning to read is a gradual process that starts at the very beginning of life. And in order to read, we must have language. The power of early adult-child interactions is remarkable. Researchers found that when mothers frequently spoke to their infants, their children learned almost 300 more words by age 2 than their peers whose mothers rarely spoke to them. However, mere exposure to language through television or adult conversation provided little benefit. Infants need to interact directly with others. Children need to hear people talk to them about what they are seeing and experiencing for their brains to fully develop language skills. If children don't have language, they have less of an understanding of the world around them. They have a harder time understanding what things are and how they work and possibly fall behind. They can have a difficult time trying to communicate with their family and their peers, which can affect the child's social and emotional well-being. Oral language is the foundation for all literacy. In order to read, write, communicate appropriately, or understand the world around them, children need language. Let's look at some things that parents can do to help promote language and literacy development. First, continually talk and read to children. In order to have language, a child must hear it. In this beginning stage, children will acquire language by hearing adults constantly talk and read to them. You can make connections between what children are seeing and hearing. Adults must constantly be talking to children. More importantly, adults must be talking to children about what they are doing and describe what they are seeing. Make sure to verbally label items for children. Here's your sock. I'm putting on your sock. Your sock is on your foot. This is how children learn what things are. You are giving children words and meaning to the world around them. You can foster verbal skills and encourage back and forth conversations. Children need to play with language and the sounds of language. Adults need to encourage young children's attempts with communication. Foster a child's babbling by talking and playing with them. As children get older and have basic language, it's up to you to encourage your children to use that language. As with any new skill, children need to practice using language in everyday situations. And of course, be present in the moment. Adults need to pay attention to what children are doing in order to facilitate conversations and extend thinking. You need to remember that your interactions are important and have a powerful impact on learning and language development. Create experiences that extend learning. Adults should be asking open-ended questions that not only require children to think about what they're doing, but verbally express it in more than a one-word answer. Adults need to provide experiences for children to explore and encourage the child's natural sense of wonder. As children begin to have a basic understanding of the world around them, it is now up to you as the adult to extend that knowledge, introducing them to new items, concepts, and vocabulary. What does the brain research tell us? Well, the experiences young children receive in the first 3 years of life are crucial to brain development. As your child receives loving care and stimulation, neural connections are formed between his brain cells. These connections form the wiring system of the brain. Your child's early experiences largely determine the strength and function of her brain's wiring system. Warm, responsive parents who cuddle and talk to their children and provide challenging learning experiences promote healthy brain development for their children. If certain brain cells are not used on a regular basis, they will wither away. How does the brain know which connections to keep? This is where early experiences come into play. Through repetition, brain connections become permanent. Conversely, a connection that is not used at all or often enough is unlikely to survive. For example, a child who is rarely spoken to or read to in the early years may have difficulty mastering language skills later on. An infant's brain thrives on feedback from its environment. It wires itself into a thinking and emotional organ from the things it experiences. So those interactions are so incredibly important at these young ages. And as you can see from this graph, basic vocabulary begins before a child is even born. Let's now take a look at books and reading with your child. So here are some things to think about. Introduce books from day one. No child is too young to be read to. Model reading. Children need to see adults reading for enjoyment. When you read to your child, point to the words as you read and point to the pictures that correspond with the words. Read daily. Read at bedtime. Make it part of your bedtime routine. When your child is all tucked in, lay next to them and read a book as the last part of the bedtime routine. That's what I did with both of my boys growing up, and it was a wonderful experience. Discuss the book as you read it. It's not a chore that you need to get through as quick as possible. It should be enjoyable, lively, and fun. Make connections to the things happening in the book, such as, oh, look, that boy in the book has a dog. We have a dog too. What's our dog's name? Or he's at the grocery store. We go to the grocery store too, making those real life connections. Keep books in all areas of your home. Reading the same book over and over is a good thing. Children learn through repetition. You can also change things up each time that you read the book, because sometimes we know they want the same book over and over and over, and you're like, oh goodness, but how can you change it up and make it more interesting for both you and your child? Reading out loud is considered one of the best ways to prepare children for learning to read. There are so many books out there to choose from, so let's look at some different types of books. You will want to make sure you choose fun and engaging books. You can also find books that are more interactive and allow children to participate or repeat familiar parts of the story. Like these two books here, Mortimer and Mud Puddle, two of my favorite books of all time. Really fun and engaging and let your child interact with the story. There are also those special sentimental books that just warm our hearts and make us feel good. Two examples here, Owl Moon and Sophie's Squash. I highly recommend Sophie's Squash. Just a beautiful, beautiful story. And then, of course, we have the classics or traditional books are also important. These are stories passed down from generation to generation. It's something that we all have in common. So you want to make sure to include those traditional books as well. Now, some books have a lot of words to tell their stories. Some have very few and get right to the point. And then you have books with no words at all in the books. So these books let the pictures speak for themselves and allow for great interactions and conversations between you and your child to discuss what's going on in the pictures. Now, there's so much learning that takes place in any book as you facilitate, talk, ask questions, and more. Lots of learning that takes place in all of them. But there are some books that are designed to teach a specific topic. So I want you to be very careful when choosing these types of books. Make sure that they are appropriate for your child's age, not too wordy, and if possible, engaging. No matter what type of book you are reading, remember, it's about the journey, not the destination. Reading with your child is not about getting from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. It's about the interactions and conversations that occur outside of the book. Reading with your child should be interactive and engaging. There is much more to reading with your child than meets the eye. It's about bonding, positive interactions, building language, problem solving, comprehension, laughing, crying, sharing ideas, finding common interests, and of course, seeing that reading can be enjoyable. A book is merely a springboard, and we must remember that the possibilities are endless on what can happen with something so simple as a book. It's just natural that you'll be reading some of the same books over and over again to your child, like we talked about. And this is okay. Repetition is good and helps to solidify learning. When you're reading the same book over and over, think of different ways to extend the learning during the reading and also after. And now some books just naturally lend themselves to creating fun extensions after reading the book. So for example, you can see on the screen, after reading We're Going on a Bear Hunt, you can have your child draw the different parts of the book, such as going through the wheat field, over the bridge, or up a tree. Don't forget, this is also one of those great interactive books that you can act out as you read it as well. Here's another example where a child drew part of the book after reading it, after reading Silly Sally, and they drew a picture and then said what it was, and then the adult wrote that on the paper, so including that piece of literacy as well. Now this example, this was in a classroom, but could also be done at home. The teacher read the book 10 Black Dots, and in the story, the dots form a lot of different things. So then the teacher gave the children a bunch of black dots to see what they could create with their black dots. Now here's an example where the teacher read the nursery rhyme, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jumped over the candlestick. Now, after reading it a few times, the children got out the blocks and started to build different candlesticks to jump over. And as you can see in the picture here, this boy built a really tall candlestick with a lot of sticks to see if he could jump over it. And do you think that he was able to jump over that big candlestick? Well, let's see. There he goes, starting to jump over it. And he did it. So Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, but taking that nursery rhyme and extending the learning that's taking place. So here are some experiences that help promote language and literacy development that you can do at home. And there is a handout that accompanies this training. So all of these are in that handout, so you don't need to write them down. So here are some examples that promote language and literacy development at home. So you can do songs, sing some songs, finger plays, bring in poetry, nursery rhymes like we talked about, those familiar nursery rhymes and stories. Act out familiar stories that they know, like the Three Bears. Tell stories without books, books that you're familiar with, stories that you're familiar with. You don't need the book. You can tell that story. You can tell it while you're driving in the car or out somewhere, and you don't even need the book. Bag stories, all you have to do is just grab some toys from around the house, such as people, cars, and animals, and put them into a bag, and then pull them out. And as you pull out the different toy, you just make up a story that goes along with the toys that you're pulling out. And you can do that and then have your child make up a story as well. Draw a picture about the story that you just read. Story writing. Give your child a prompt such as, how do you cook a turkey? And then write down everything that they say. Or just say, how does your story start? And they will tell you a story, and then you can write that down for them. I used to do that when my youngest would take a bath. I'd sit next to him and just say, how does your story start? And he'd tell me a story while he's taking a bath, and I'd just write down everything that he said in his story. Usually they were about Pokemon, but that's what he wanted to talk about. And then he was able to have that and keep that. Pen pals. Create pen pals with friends or relatives. Create homemade journals for writing and drawing. Make bookmarks. While your child draws or colors a picture, ask questions about what they're making. Ask if they want you to write anything on their picture for them. When you cook, follow a recipe. Help your child with meals and snacks and follow the recipe. Have your child create signs to use around the house, such as work area or work in progress or don't touch, quiet please. Take a trip to your local library and find different websites that are appropriate that promote literacy, like riff.org or kidsclub.com. Find space in your home to create a small writing center with markers and crayons and safety scissors if age appropriate, and different things to write on, different types of papers and notebooks for them to write on or draw on. Create your own games and pieces with your child. Make a fort or cozy reading area. Label things around your house, label bins, toys, and shelves. So we're bringing that literacy into their playroom or their bedroom where their toys and where they go are labeled to also help with cleanup and organization. Make some cards for friends and families. You can also graph your activities that you do when you're doing activities with your child. Maybe it's something that you can graph, such as listing your findings from a sink and float activity or measuring items from a grocery store. So much of what you do every day can help to develop your child's language and literacy skills, but sometimes it's easy to forget to take the time to focus on language and literacy and incorporate it into your everyday interactions. Remember to keep language and literacy in the back of your mind. In each interaction with your child, think to yourself, how can I make this a language or literacy opportunity? Keep in mind some key points. Ask open-ended questions, such as, how did you make that? What can we do next? What can we add to it? Create real and meaningful conversations. Allow your child to help plan activities and meals. You don't always have to read to your child. Have your child read to you. Even if they can't read, they can look at the pictures and tell a story from that. Encourage your child's efforts. Say something like, I remember when you couldn't turn the pages. Now look at how you hold the book and turn the pages all by yourself. Encourage your child to express their feelings with words. Instead of pointing and making noises, encourage them to use their words. Eat together and have mealtime conversations. You have a captive audience at that time. Read longer and more advanced stories as they grow. Listen to your child. Give them your undivided attention. Show them that you really care about what they have to say. And right now, that's very hard in the digital age with our phones and everybody being on them, but give them your undivided attention when they're talking to you. And most importantly, have fun with your child. Remember, it's within your interactions where true learning takes place. And that's it. So I want to thank you guys for joining us today and talking about language and literacy and different things that you can do at home to promote that.